What is up, everyone, and welcome to NFL Nexus. Well, the draft is officially in the books, and for the Houston Texans, man, this feels like it was more than just another draft. It feels like a huge foundational moment. They walked away with this really fascinating mix of talent. Some guys who can make an impact right away, and some high-upside projects that could really shape the next few years of Texans football. So today, we're going to do a complete deep dive. We are going way beyond the headlines to break down every single pick, every strategic choice, and what it all means for DeMeco Ryans' big vision. If you're ready to get into the real nitty-gritty of this draft class, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, like the video, and definitely drop a comment below with your first impression grade for Houston's Haul. It's honestly the best way to support the channel, and we love hearing what you guys think. So the big question on every single Texans fan's mind is, what did we really get? On paper, it looks pretty solid, but the draft is all about turning that potential into actual on-field production. Are these guys going to be immediate starters who come in and just change the game from week one? Or are there some hidden gems kind of buried in those later rounds? The sleepers who might just become Pro Bowlers in a couple of years. And on the other hand, did they maybe take a few big swings that might not connect, leaving us all wondering what if? Well, that's exactly what we're here to figure out. So let's get into the film, the stats, and the strategy to break it all down. Okay, to make sense of this whole class, we've broken this down into 5 key parts. First up, we're going to talk about the immediate impact. These are the day one guys they're counting on. Then we'll go on a little treasure hunt for the potential sleepers, those late rounders who could become household names. After that, we'll look at the long-term bets, the guys with huge potential that just need a little patience. And we're not stopping there. We're even going to cover the undrafted class, because you never know where the next star is hiding. And finally, we'll zoom out for the big picture to see what this class really tells us about the Texans' overall philosophy. Let's get started with the big guns. All right, first up, let's talk about the players Nick Caserio and DeMeco Ryans are really counting on to make a difference from the second they walk into the building. In the NFL today, rookie contracts are just so valuable, and hitting on your early round picks, it's pretty much non-negotiable. These are the premium guys, the ones drafted with the clear expectation that they are going to step in and grab a big role from day one. So, with the 26th overall pick in the first round, the Texans went down to the ACC and they grabbed this absolute mountain of an offensive lineman, Keelan Rutledge, out of Georgia Tech. Now, this pick, right away, it signaled a very clear, very direct priority for the Texans. It was a statement. It was them saying, forget the flashy stuff for a second, we're about building an identity. And you'll see, this is a theme that runs through their whole draft. They wanted to get tougher, meaner, and just plain more dominant in the trenches. Look, it's not just about his size or his strength, it's about his mindset. Rutledge is known for being tenacious, for being a finisher. He brings that certain nasty streak to the field that you just can't coach. And that fits perfectly with the whole swarm mentality DeMeco Ryans is building. But let's get specific. He fills a huge hole for powerful, effective run blockers. The Texans want to control the line of scrimmage, punish defenses on the ground, and Rutledge is the kind of mauler who makes that happen. Now here's where it gets really interesting. He was a tackle in college, but the projection is for him to slide inside and play center, a spot he really only messed around with at the Senior Bowl. That's a huge projection. It's a risk for sure, but it tells you everything you need to know about his football IQ and his versatility that the team is willing to bet he can not only make that switch, but maybe anchor the entire line for the next decade. And they did not have to wait long. Moving right into the second round, just 10 picks later at number 36, the Texans stayed right there in the trenches, but just flipped to the other side of the ball. They snagged the disruptive defensive tackle Caden McDonald from Ohio State. So if the Rutledge pick was about building a fortress, this pick was about buying a wrecking ball. It was another move that went right after a major area of need. McDonald is a really fascinating guy to break down. The first thing you see on tape is that he is an absolutely top-tier run defender. He's just a wall, an anchor against double teams. Now, the big knock on him coming out was his size. He's a little bit undersized for a classic interior guy, but he makes up for that lack of height with just incredible natural leverage, pure power, and a first step that is lightning quick. That explosiveness is his superpower. It lets him just shoot through gaps and blow up plays in the backfield before they even get going. He's the perfect chess piece to plug right into the middle of that D-line. The thinking is that he has a very, very real chance to win the starting job right next to the veteran Sheldon Rankins, which would give them a really powerful 1-2 punch on the inside. You got one guy to eat up blocks and the other to create havoc. It's exactly what they've been missing to solidify that front. Every great draft class has them. Those guys picked on day 2 or 3 who end up playing way better than their draft spot would suggest. These are the sleepers, right? The hidden gems that can turn a good draft into a legendary one. And the Texans made a few picks in the later rounds that have a lot of people buzzing about their potential for a massive return on investment. Let's dig into who they are. In the 5th round, the Texans may have found one of the true steals of the entire draft in Kamari Ramsey, a defensive back from USC. Ramsey's calling card is just incredible versatility. I mean, in today's NFL, where offenses are all about creating mismatches, having a defender who can wear a bunch of different hats is pure gold. He's got great size, he plays a physical style, and that lets him line up all over the secondary. He can play deep as a single high safety, he can come down in the box to help against the run, or he can cover those shifty slot receivers as a nickel corner. Now, the Texans already have a pretty stacked secondary, so his path to starting right away is a bit crowded. But honestly, that's the perfect spot for him. He's not going to be thrown to the wolves. He can learn from the vets, become a major player on special teams, and just be that dynamic, do-it-all depth piece that every single championship-level team needs. Seriously, mark my words, down the road, don't be surprised at all if Ramsey becomes a major impact player for this defense. Then in the 6th round, Houston took a shot on wide receiver Lewis Bond from Boston College. Bond is what you'd call a classic dart throw pick. He's not going to blow you away at the combine. He doesn't have that crazy athletic profile. Not a 4.3 guy, doesn't have a giant frame. But what he does have is just an undeniable track record of production. This guy became one of the best receivers in Boston College history for one simple reason. He just knows how to get open. He's a really crafty, technically sound route runner, especially in those short to intermediate areas, and he uses subtle moves to create just enough space. Now, he's going to face a really tough battle for playing time in a crowded slot receiver room with guys like Tank Dell. But the fact that he's proven he can be a reliable target makes him a really interesting guy to watch in camp. He's the type of player that coaches just fall in love with. And with their last pick in the 7th round, the Texans grabbed linebacker Aiden Fisher from Indiana. Fisher is the absolute poster child for the type of player this front office loves to find late in the draft. He might not have the ideal size or length for a linebacker, but he checks every single intangible box you can think of. He has a nonstop, high motor, he's an experienced team captain and a leader, and he's actually surprisingly athletic in space. These are the core traits the Texans are building around. He's not expected to play a huge role on defense in year 1, but at just 22 years old, there's a ton of developmental potential there. He's exactly the kind of guy who comes in and makes his mark on special teams immediately, flying down on kickoffs, making tackles, and with good coaching, could absolutely develop into a key rotational linebacker for them in a couple of years. Okay, now we get to the projects. This is really where the good front offices separate themselves from the great ones. Not every single pick is about fixing a problem for this season. Some are about investing in the future. The Texans use some pretty serious draft capital on guys who have a really high ceiling, but might need a year, maybe 2 of development before they're ready to be consistent playmakers. And you can see this balanced approach with 3 key picks they made in the first 4 rounds. Tight end Marlon Klein from Michigan in the 2nd, O-lineman Phoebe-Chin Waiwu from Oklahoma in the 4th, and linebacker Wade Woodass from Clemson also in the 4th. Look, spending 3 picks in the top 125 on guys who probably aren't going to start right away, that's a bold move. It shows you that the front office is confident in the roster they have now, and they're playing the long game, thinking not just about 2026, but about building something that can last. The Marlon Klein pick in the 2nd round, well, it was a bit of a head-scratcher for some people on draft night. At Michigan, he was known way more for his punishing blocking and his raw athleticism than he was for catching passes. So what he is right now is basically a fantastic 6th offensive lineman, a depth tight end who can block his tail off. What he needs to become is a real threat in the passing game who can stretch the field. His ultimate value, the thing that will justify that 2nd-round pick, is going to depend entirely on how the coaching staff can develop that side of his game. The plan is obvious. Let him learn behind a smart vet like Dalton Schultz, and if he can unlock that receiving potential, his mix of size, speed, and blocking gives him a crazy high ceiling. In the 4th round, they went right back to their main focus, doubling down on the offensive line with Phoebe-Chin Waiwu. This pick was another clear investment in quality depth and, you guessed it, versatility. Waiwu is a tough, battle-tested lineman from the SEC who's played a ton at both guard and center. Right now, he projects as a key backup, sort of the perfect 6th man who can step in at multiple spots without a huge drop-off. He'll probably need a full year in an NFL weight room to refine his technique before he's a full-time starter you feel great about, but the strategy seems pretty clear. Let him develop in year 1 and then have him compete for a starting job at guard or center in year 2. It's both depth for now and a potential solution for later. Just a few picks after Waiwu, they took Wade Woodass, a linebacker from Clemson. Woodass is a classic tools and treats prospect. It is all about the athletic upside. He's quick, he's tall, he's got a long frame, and he has those fluid hips that you need to be a great coverage linebacker in today's NFL. But the key for his rookie year is going to be his work on special teams. That's where he's going to earn his paycheck right away. And while he's making an impact there,
The coaches will be working with him to sharpen his instincts and really harness all those raw physical gifts. Just like the other guys in this group, he's a bet on development, with the potential for a really big payoff in a year or two as a core piece of D'Amico Ryan's defense. The draft might end after 7 rounds, but building a championship roster never stops. Right after that final pick is announced, it's a total frenzy, as teams scramble to sign the best undrafted free agents. The Texans were right in the mix, bringing in 10 UDFAs who are now going to head to training camp with a massive chip on their shoulder, fighting for a spot on that final 53-man roster. As you can see, they brought in guys from all over, just casting a wide net for talent. It's a long shot for any of these guys for sure, but every single year, UDFAs make rosters and become key players. So I want to highlight 2 names here to keep an eye on. First, the punter, Jack Stonehouse from Syracuse. You never want a specialist to get too comfortable, right? So the Texans brought in Stonehouse to create some real competition at punter, which is always a smart move. Second, and maybe more interesting, is running back Noah Whittington from Oregon. Now think about this. Look at the whole draft class. Whittington was the only running back the Texans added in the entire process, drafted or undrafted. That puts him in a really unique position to compete for a roster spot if he can flash in the preseason. Okay, so we've gone through all the individual players, from the first rounder all the way to the undrafted guys. Now let's zoom out. What do all of these picks, when you put them all together, really tell us about the Texans' philosophy and their long-term plan? Let's break down the big picture strategy. If there is one single undeniable takeaway from this entire draft process, it's this. The Houston Texans made it a top priority to get bigger, stronger, and deeper along the offensive line. I mean, it was the absolute central theme of their entire weekend. And you can see just how serious they were about it. They didn't just spend their first-round pick on a lineman in Keelan Rutledge. They came right back in the 4th round for another versatile piece in Febicine Waiwu. And then, the second the draft was over, they went out and signed 2 more promising linemen as UDFAs, James Neal and Sam Hagan. That's 4 new bodies, 4 new competitors, in one of the most critical position groups in the sport. This was no accident. It was a clear, deliberate plan to beef up their protection, and more importantly, to reestablish a dominant run-blocking identity. So beyond just the positions, you can see a really consistent philosophy in the type of players they went after. It's like they had a checklist of traits for what makes a Texans fit in this class. First on that list was versatility. Guys like Rutledge, Ramsey, and Nwaiwu can all play multiple spots, which gives the coaches incredible flexibility. Second, it was all about high motor and mindset. They went after relentless guys, team captains like Rutledge and Fisher, who just embody that tough, hard-nosed culture D'Amico Ryan's is building. And third, tying it all together, there was a laser focus on run blocking, a clear emphasis on guys who can move people and control the ground game. So that brings us to our final big question here. The Texans walked away with a class that seems to have this fantastic mix of guys who can help right now and these high-upside projects that could pay off big time down the road. They hit their biggest needs while staying true to a clear set of values. So you have to ask, did Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryan's just draft the foundational pieces that are going to take this team from just a contender to a true champion? Only time will tell, but you can see the blueprint. Thank you so much for tuning in to this deep dive here on NFL Nexus. Let me know in the comments what was your favorite pick of the draft. And hey, if you enjoyed this breakdown and want to support the channel, a really great way to do that is by checking out the coloring books we have for sale. You can get to them with the QR code on your screen or just by using the link in the description. They're perfect for fans of all ages, your kids, your grandkids, or even for you. Your support really does help us keep making content just like this. We'll see you next time.